All right, so we have already used the layout called flow layout, and there are more layouts than this, but we're only going to use 3 layouts in this class. Okay, so we're going to use flow layout, grid layout, and border layout. We saw what flow layout looks like. Flow layout is what we have for our simple frame, and when we run simple frame and we change the size of it, the components that are added on there kind of flow in where they fit. So that's why it's called flow layout. Okay, this looks kind of like what a grid layout would look like. So let's look at that. All right, so this is a grid layout. And basically what it is it makes like a table. Okay, and when we create the grid, we tell it how many rows and how many columns we want. And then when we add things to that, it's going to add filling in the top row from left to right, and then filling in the next row left to right, etc. Okay? When we create a grid layout, we have to tell it, like I said, how many rows and how many columns we want. So this is going to be a 3-row, 4-column grid. All right? The other one is border layout, and border layout has basically 5 regions that you can add things to. Okay, so you can add something to the north, something to the west, something to the center, south, and east. Center takes up the most room. Okay, and if you look at this example that I gave you on the site here, you can see I've added a text field to the north here and a button to the center. The west, the east, and the south just kind of go away. Okay, so if we don't use them, they just don't get used. All right, and the center takes up the most room out of any of them. So that's grid layout and that's border layout. Okay, and I'm just going to show you really quickly how you would use those in a program. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is for simple frame, I'm going to change the layout of simple frame. And I'm going to take out the this.set layout, new flow layout, and just add in this.set layout, new grid layout. All right, so grid layout needs to be imported just like flow layout does. All right, so I'm going to do Control-Shift-O to import that. And then the other thing that I want to do is I want to tell it how many rows and how many columns I want. So I want, in this case, 3 rows and 2 columns. And then when I run this, okay, now my simple frame looks a little bit different. So you guys can see how this is a row, row 2, row 3, and then 2 columns. Okay, it works the exact same way. So if I do Ed Grimley again, okay, say hello, it still says hello Ed Grimley. It's just that the layout has changed, the way that the components are organized. Okay, if I resize this, it stays in that 3x2 grid. You guys see what I'm talking about? Okay, so that's what a grid layout does. Okay, sometimes that's going to be a nice layout to work with. And then I'll just show you a quick example of using border layout. So this will be like really, really what? So this thing is going to extend JFrame. So this is my border layout frame. Okay, so I'm just going to create a couple things here. J text field. Let's say name TF. I'm a label. All right, so This is not an inspired example or anything like that, but just so you guys get the idea of how to add to a border layout. This is all I really wanted to get through. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do this dot set layout in here, and we're going to go new border layout. Okay, so kind of like the flow layout, you don't have to put anything in the parentheses there. It knows that a border layout only has those 5 regions. Okay, when we add, this is something a little bit different. Okay, so this is what you got to pay attention to. When we add to something that has a border layout, so if I want to add the name text field, I also have to put a comma and then tell it where I want that thing to go. Okay, so I don't have to do that for flow or grid, but I have to do it for border because I got to say, like, now I want it to be in the east or whatever. So the way you do that is you go border layout dot east. Okay, so that has to be all caps. Okay, so then if I wanted to add other things in here, okay, so for example, I got that blah label, and let's add that to the north. Okay, and then I'll add the press button, and let's add that to the center. Okay, so I'm going to do this dot pack. This is going to be an ugly looking interface. This dot set visible. True. Alright. And then I'm going to go ahead and just import everything with the keyboard. So Command Shift O or Control Shift O for you guys. Okay. And then run this thing. So there it is. So I'm a label is in the north. Okay. This is my text field. Alright. Which is not very evident. Okay. And then this is my press me button that's in the center. If I change the size of this, the center just like takes up all the space. And the north and the east kind of take up as much space as they need. Okay. If I change the text field here to be 10, now I'm changing the size of that text field. Now it looks like I can type stuff in there. Does that make sense? Still, when I resize this, that center thing takes up the most space. And I'll just show you one last little thing here. Okay, so if I don't use the center at all, okay, if I put the button in the south, so it looks like that might be in the center now, that text field, but it's really not. So if I resize this, the center still takes up the majority of the space. Okay, so this is the east, this is the north, this is the south. This is really the center now, and the west isn't being used. Okay, so just wanted to introduce the idea of layouts because we're going to use them going forward. You guys have any questions?